Welcome to the Hub series video tutorials. Hub 1408 and Hub 1616 are the new digital zoner with DSP by ECLER. In this video, you will learn how to create personalized setup using Hanger web app. Plug the hub to the mains using the power cord. Connect the hub device to the router using Cat5 cable or higher. Press and hold the control and rotary encoder keys simultaneously for 3 seconds and the device display the network configuration. Open your web browser and introduce the IP address shown in the configuration screen to access the Hanger web application. Hanger application is explained in detail accessing it as an administrator, using the credentials by default, admin, admin. Configuring the device. With this page, you're able to configure the hub's device Ethernet network parameters, update the firmware, restore to factory default settings, load a predefined setup, or change the device boot up mode. An internet connection is required to access these settings. The predefined setups are quick configuration files which will allow a quick startup, starting from a predefined configuration and including pilot control panels already created. Inputs. On the Inputs page, you'll be able to configure the audio sources. To select an input, click on the central button of that input, or select and edit several inputs at once using Ctrl and Shift buttons. Change the EQ parameters using the rotary controls, volume using the slider, and mute with the switch button. Activate the high pass filter and noise gate by clicking the buttons at the bottom if needed. Click on the top arrow to drop down a menu and change the input level. Configure the balanced inputs as stereo. Activate the frequency shifter to avoid feedbacks on the mic inputs, or change polarity. Second row of inputs correspond to the 8 RJ45 remote inputs, which are managed through the EM Control 1 and WPA Mix T wall panels via Cat5 cable. Outputs. The Outputs page allows you to configure the audio outputs of the hub devices. The graphical interface is identical to the Inputs page, with a few exceptions. Select the input source. The administrator can define a range between the minimum and maximum volume that the user can adjust for a zone. In the bottom menu, you can modify the DSP features of the output parameters, such as delay in milliseconds, meters, or feet, the crossover filter, useful for subwoofer signals, the 8-band graphic equalizer, or applying a compressor or limiter. Easily copy and paste the DSP configurations from one output to the other. You can convert 2 mono outputs into a stereo pair using the stereo button. If a stereo input is assigned to a mono output, the hub device automatically performs the stereo to mono L+R conversion. If a stereo input is assigned to a stereo output, both outputs will contain the same audio source, double mono, but the same processing will be applied. Finally, the outputs have a panic button, located in the upper right corner of the Outputs page. When panic button is activated, all the output channels of the hub device are muted. General volume. The general volume affects all outputs assigned to this control, by default all outputs. Change the label name, select those outputs that will be affected by the overall volume, mute or adjust the master volume. And define a minimum and maximum general volume range values. Pages Duckers. In the Pages Duckers page, up to 4 priority modules can be configured. The microphone inputs can be configured to behave like a ducker, priority over another, essential for evacuation or emergency messages. 2 inputs can be configured in pager mode, management by means of the alert console, EM page. The priority module volume setting is independent of the zone volume and general volume, so priority voice messages are guaranteed to reach that zone at an appropriate volume, even if any of the zones are muted or very low in volume. Configure the input priority parameters and select those zones to which priority messages will be sent in this page. Configuring user controls. The front panel. On each zone, enable or disable volume, source selection, or equalizer manipulation from the hub device front panel individually, or block it entirely with the global panel lock button at the upper right corner. In addition, this page allows you to adjust the parameters and operation of the front panel LCD display, such as backlight, contrast, and default zone selection, after a few seconds of inactivity. Remote control panels. The Remote Panels page shows the status of the 8 panels that can be connected to a hub unit. The EM Control 1 wall panel allows you to control sound source selection, volume, and equalization adjustment remotely. The combination of a WPA Mix-T and EM Control 1 panels turns the remote control unit into a remote input, connected to the hub remote port with a single Cat5 cable, routing the balanced line level audio signal, together with the necessary control data and DC power. On the same page, it is possible to display the status of the EM page message consoles, connected or not to the hub unit. Users. The Users page allows to manage and create the accounts of the different client users. Each user can access the Hanger web application or mobile application ECLER Pilot with individual login credentials assigned by the administrator. Be able to edit up to 20 different users. Also in this section, you can allow or deny loading predefined setups, which will modify the device's settings and change the administrator's password. Pilot panels. Following with the Pilot Panels page, the administrator configures the control panels that users can operate through external devices by running the ECLER Pilot application or standard web browsers after identifying themselves with their credentials. Up to 32 pilot panels can be created, each with its own configuration. Each panel can be designed with different control types, such as rotary knobs or sliders, and set up with a different control text and background color. If Pub Switch is activated, it indicates that the pilot panel belongs to the public profile. Therefore, all users have access to the pilot panel, no credentials required. The pilot panels can be customized by adding a small image or a corporate logo in the upper right corner of the panel. There are 2 different ways to access the application. The Public Pilot Panels. Click on the Public Pilot Panels button and the pilot panels created by the administrator will be displayed. To access this public profile, no login credentials are required. The other way is the user. Non-administrators or end users of the system have limited access. They can perform only for control functions, control the volume of a certain output, for example, not advanced steps. Help. The Help page contains useful information about the hub device and is easily accessible. This information is only accessible when the device is connected to the internet. For further information, visit ecler.com and download the Hanger and Pilot manuals.